So, in the honor of Scott the Waz's 200th video, which seems kind of insane, I'm going to make a timeline of all the videos up to this point, at least of the whole story videos, because there's a lot of videos. 200! And so like 17 really we need to care about right now. So, we're going to do that. But first time I think, if you're not asleep, I think, hey, in Scott the Waz, you should have a video game review show? No. There's a lot of continuity between there. Like, for example, in early episodes, he says, the only mystery that I still have about video games is buy a copy of Blink Splash. It's like every time to get off the shelf. And then several years later, in an episode I'll be talking about later, it's about Merry Christmas. Guess what? Why are all your copies of Blink Splash wet? Well, we still don't know. Or something I'll cover a bit later in the first story episode, the 50th one, is a Man '08 Christmas. And also, he loves Man '08 for some reason. Also, there's probably a couple cuts here because there is no way I can talk about all this in just like one sitting, because then, well, you'll see. Okay, so in very Man '08 Christmas, he gets invited to an anonymous gathering of vegans, a vegans anonymous gathering with the first two main characters you need to know: Jib Jab, diehard vegan; Terry Lesnar, dire harder and veganer. Okay, so then they're invited, and he's like, hey, look, Man '08, it's so cool. They're like, no, it's not too cool, it's just Madden. And oh look, Man '09, which he hates, by the way, is super cool. Oh my goodness, this is the worst. And now goes to the store, look, there's only Man 18. So he takes all the copies of Man 18, so like 200 at the store, and then brings it back over to the Vegans Anonymous gathering and puts it into a fridge. And, well, okay, so then there's, so the next bit weird bit, incredibly insane bit of continuity is when someone comes to the news says, well, copies of Man 18 have been stolen, and and then, last time again, another episode we'll be talking about later, the Dark Age of Nintendo, there's the same guy, and like the same performer, and he says, I tried to be a news anchor, but it didn't work out. And that's him being a news anchor. Just a lot of continuity. Anyways, back to Man '08 Christmas. And so then the next main character offers steel wool, put on the case, and he tries to find the copies of Man 18, which again is in that freezer. So then he's like, okay. So then Scott the Waz, just like totally normal, accidentally brushes his teeth with Raid, and then he's out, and then guess what? It's the ghost of the person on the Spanish cover of Man '08, Luis Castillo. That's his name. Totally, that's his name. Don't Angola, that's his name. So then he goes to that, and like, oh yeah, you stole my brethren. Come on, what are you doing? So like, I need to take a walk. And then he meets up our next main character, Wendy's employee. He's a Wendy's employee. And then they're like, they're sitting down, chilling out, and like, yeah, what's the point of a belief system if everyone has to share the same beliefs? Well, then he's like, oh my goodness, I made a big mistake. So then he goes back to the Vegan Anonymous gathering where the cops have come in, and he says, hey, I actually am the person who stole all the copies of Man 18. And they're like, oh no, we're gonna arrest you. Wait, hold it. The next Man just came out, so we don't care. Like, this is completely worthless. Like, drop like $1 bajillion. So it's like, all of it's just $1. So you can go now. Don't really care. And that's the first thing. Next one will be much bigger. Next important one is the game stores, where the next main character, Chet, works at a games on a shelf, where games are on a shelf. And he's done the games, and Scott, oopsie makes things a bit worse. And he makes things a bit worse, and kind of collapses the store. Not really collapses, like, you know, makes it a bit worse because they're not doing predatory marketing practices, and he gets fired by Chet. Anyways, next one, homecoming dances or whatever. It's talking about dances. And then he gets the next main character, Rexmos, as a school chaperone, at a dance. That's it. And that means the next episode is the 100th episode, Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops. So Scott the Waz is playing Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops. And then, while he's playing Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops, someone who loves Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops hates it like games that aren't Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops. So then he goes back in time to do something probably related to Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops. So then the entire talent is changed somehow, which we don't know yet, to be more Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoopsy. So I'll just call it College Hoops now because that's a mouthful. So then he meets up with some old friends, Wendy's employee, Jeb and Terry Lesnar, in this new college hoops universe. And they're like, yeah, you seem to be outside of society because you're like protesting Dick Vitale and talking about saying stuff like Madden or stuff, whatever, stuff like that. And also, and then he talks about, look at this game that I was able to keep. It was Man No 8, which he put in a special Ziploc bag that can protect it from the timeline changing, because apparently he is very prepared. So then, they're like, oh yeah, we gotta like, make timelines back normal, because this proves that there are other timelines and that they have other games like Madden 08. So then they go down to the ruler, and this steals access code to go on television, tell everyone about Madden 08 and stuff. So then they go down and like, hey, how did that thing become so awesome, baby? Well, you seem pretty cool, liking Dick Vitale and stuff, so I'll tell you. Okay, so apparently he was mad that other people didn't like all troops, so then he went back in time to, in his own words, make Dick Vitale buy all the patents to all the other sports data games so they couldn't make any, and also make himself the owner of, a leader of a couple governments, and also, make himself the leader of all Dick Vitale-related activities, which also are all now mandatory for everyone on wherever they are by this point. So then they show his access code, and he goes on television and says, look, there's Man No 8. There's other games other than Dick Vitale. And because they kind of been dealing with this for a while, they kind of realize their whole life is a lie. So guess what? Rioting in the streets. Well, after the rioting, still happening, the leader's like, oh, come on, guys. Took all my stuff. Made up with Batman for some reason. And, I'm just going to turn to Sega Genesis, which is the console that Dick Vitale's on, and turn into a giant mech. So then Scott turns Man No 8 into a giant mech, and then giant mech battle, where eventually he throws Dick Vitale's activated call shoots and Man No 8 into a giant explosion thing that's going to explode over timeline and stuff. And then, but anything high that explosion will be erased from timelines, and that includes Man No 8. So then he's super sad, but then he realizes, everyone else gets their game, so I might not have Man No 8, but everyone else is there. Ring, ring. Oh, I won a contest to make my any video game that I wanted. Well, guess what? It's Man No 8 page. Man 8 exists again. And actually, there was one more thing I could say before my brain effectively turns into silly putty. I have to refresh this. Okay, so next. It's probably the next it's really important episode. It's called where, guess what? It's a dinner party with pretty much everyone except the newsstand guy. Give him a name later. Is there. It's run by Chit Chat. It has 5 people out there. Terry Lesnar, Jeb Jeb, Wendy's employee, Rick Morris, and Steel Wool. They're all there, and guess what? Chit Chat, he gets murdered. Whoops. Then everyone else also gets murdered, except it turns out who's the killing everyone. It's Officer Steel Wool. And then he, okay. So they talked about earlier about the Madden curse. So, what having the new Madden chest kind of breaks all your legs and stuff. So then he puts Madden on his chest, and then it breaks his leg. Puts Madden on Will's chest, and it breaks his legs. Yeah. And that's how they stop him. And, okay, last one, I promise. Getting on a budget. No, it's borrowing me Christmas. Borrowing me Christmas. The last time later. Yeah, this is it now. He is bankrupt. It's kind of the boss. He's bankrupt. Super sad. So the only way to get himself out of bankruptcy is to make a charity gala for recent murderees. So apparently, everyone except Chat did get diagnosed with murder and actually recovered. Ready to play, which would be Ready to Play, Rick Morris, and Terry Lesnar, and Jib Jab. They all survived getting murdered. That's good. So then, all 4 of them go to the charity gala for recently murdered victims. So then he makes this big challenge. But it's a bargain Christmas, so he buys $100 on 50 video games. So he gives them out, and they're all bad. Most of them are bad, most of the anyways. So they gives them all out to everyone, and they're like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. Why'd you do this? So then he leaves, and then goes to Chat comes back and says hey, oh my goodness, you gave them such worthless games and made them feel worthless. Okay, guys, and that made them feel worthless. So guess what? He comes back to remake the favor, and not really actually. They just kind of trick him. He was like, oh yeah, this is actually good. We made it too hard on him. So they go, and they make up. And they make up, they make a style, and that's all I can talk about for now. But I will get back to you in they'll just be a quick cut. So I'll try to figure out what on earth I'm talking about for the rest, because there's a lot. Like 120 episodes in, I don't know how many. Just gotta figure it out. I'm back with hopefully, the last cut that we'll need. Because, there's a few couple things here we gotta do. Okay, first, the trial. Officer Will is put on trial for people murdered, and through an interesting series of events, Stuart confesses the murder, and then is put to death, and is buried right next to Chet. That's all there. Now it's time for the dark age of Nintendo. Talking about 3 games, Animal Crossing Media Festival, and Mario Test Soul Smash, and Zero Zip Flash. Soul Smash is a Flash kind of rhyme. Anyways, so then they talk about that, and okay, so Dr. Geriatrix, the news anchor I talked about earlier. Oh yeah, so today Dr. Geriatrix. That's a news anchor, and also he is apparently a psychiatrist. And he's talking about the games, and okay, so the trailer, Jeb is a huge Gex fan, and Rick Morris hates Gex. So they go, and they play the games, they think they're Gex, and Rick Morris usually knows that they are not Gex, except the last one, because he finally went to go Gex shot. And then it turns out because the guy that was basically because running joke of throwing cheese and flash down the toilet, this blows. There's a lot. So apparently he flushed all of Shiro's and flushed down the toilet. So then, guess what? Apparently it turned into a giant blob monster that ate both Rick Morris and Dr. Geriatrix and Jeb. So then he goes and then he throws Gex at the giant blob thing. And guess what? It releases and tunes out all of Shiro's and flash. I think that was the little thing that I go for. And okay, yeah, I think that's it. And now it's time for the most meanings. So we'll see by the end of the episode. Memory cards. Okay, so he's about a pumpkin. So everybody's about a pumpkin, and then he gets the good old crew back together. Ready to deploy. Rick Morris, Jeb, and Terry Lesnar. They're back together, and they all have pumpkins, except Rick Morris with a pineapple because of fruit blindness. That's the thing apparently. So okay. The memory cards, who apparently used to be owned by Chet and Officer Steel, were possessed somehow. Sure, I'll just say they're possessed somehow. And then, I presume by the spirits of Steel Wool and Chet. Anyways, so they are there. And then, then Scott the Waz beats the Wii with the memory cards in it with a pumpkin. And then he goes to sleep, but guess what happens? The pumpkin takes the spirits of the memory cards, and then the pumpkin puts the spirits of the memory cards into the Wii. So then Scott the Waz does the only reasonable thing, and eats the Wii. Sure. That sounds really unhealthy, and you probably, put that away for now. No guts. And also, one small thing. When Disney Play tragically died in these adventures. But we gained 3 people out of this. Apparently, because of the whole Lucas Page thing, Officer Bull and Chet are back live. And in later episodes, Speed Dating, it turns out that Wendy's employee had a brother, Target employee. So now there's Target employee. Basically, it's like Wendy's employee, except you're Target instead of Wendy's. Pretty simple. And yep, that's everything except for the last thing I need to talk about. The 200th episode. Borderline forever. Okay, so I did mention this, but Scott was having a blue border on all his videos. And voila. Okay, so he says as soon as he's seen this, he's actually seen the border all the time. He just kind of realized he blocked it out. He saw it and then blotted it out of memory. There was, oh yeah, I see this and I remember this, but just kind of blotted out your memory. So then apparently it spread to all his friends, Dr. Geriatrix, and now Dr. Geriatrix has become a main person in the cast. Dr. Geriatrix, Target Employee, Rick Morris, Jeb, Officer Will and Chet up here, and Terry Lesnar, and also. Okay, so all that happens, and okay, and then the entire state of Ohio sees the blue border. He makes a lot of jokes that he lives in Ohio, and oh yeah, so then they build a giant spaceship out of all his video games, goes to space, fights Manu 9, apparently, and with the help of both of the Manu 8 cover people, he then goes and finds where the border lives, shows up, and he loses it, and then, like, absorbs it again. I could say I don't really understand it, but I think I do. I just kind of forgot. I think that's the gist. And also, Terry Lesler said, and apparently, you know how I said that Jim Jam was listed to be an intense vegan? Well, it turns out, plot twist, he doesn't want to be a vegan anymore. Oh, snap! So then he says, like, he's now, like, an honorary vegan? What would he was? A volunteer vegan. A volunteer vegan only on the weekends. I think that's what I was agreed to. I didn't watch this episode to read this, but, like, come on, put in the effort. I'm not putting all the effort, but I'm putting enough of the effort. That's like, what's half an hour now? Come on. And you thought that it wasn't that complicated. Excuse me.